Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Nathan and today I'm going to be reviewing this luxurious version of the 7th gen Honda Civic, also known as the Acura EL. If you live outside of Canada, you probably never even heard of this vehicle, let alone see one out in the wild. And that's because this vehicle was made exclusively for the Canadian market, meaning that nowhere else around the world was this vehicle ever made. And let me tell you right now, this vehicle is more than your average Civic. Let's start this review by going over the exterior design, and at first glance you think, yeah, this is your regular 7th gen Honda Civic, at least from the side profile here. But let me tell you, the real difference is at the front and rear of this vehicle. Looking at the front end of this vehicle, there is some subtle differences. Starting off with the obvious though, is the headlights. Yes, the headlights are different than the regular Civic sedan, but not to mention the fact that this being a 2005 Acura EL, it also was part of the refresh years when it came out in 2004. So it did get newer headlights than the older previous years and also a newer refreshed lower bumper. But in all model years, they did give you at least indicators down there on the bottom end of the bumper. In 2004, they gave you standard fog lamps as well, which I think makes the vehicle look a little bit better than the previous refresh version, at least on the front end here. Coming to the back end here, you'll probably notice that there is a little bit of damage on the left side of the vehicle, but don't let that fool you. The rest of this back end here looks beautiful, and it's actually my favorite part of this entire vehicle, at least from the exterior design. And that's because I love what they've done with the taillights here. They've actually kind of taken some of their characteristics from the Acura TSX and kind of give you these circular taillights. And also, not to mention, the thing that makes this so much more different than the Civic is the fact that these taillights, at least on the trunk lid here, extend further inward, which I think looks beautiful. And again, I think it kind of really makes it more distinctive. Another thing I like about the rear end, of course, is the spoiler. I think it just really adds that little bit of uniqueness and sportiness to it. Yeah, you could get that on the Honda Civic as well, but what you couldn't get was a factory aero package on the Civic sedan like you could the EL, which also gave you a front and rear lip and also some side skirts. Well, this seems awfully familiar. I'm not talking about the engine, I'm talking about the fact that there's a short ram air intake on a Honda engine. The engine itself is a D17 A2 4-cylinder engine, which makes about 127 horsepower and about 114 foot-pounds of torque. Now, this engine was very popular when it came out, of course, because all the Civics pretty much had it, but of course there was variances between a number of the engines themselves. Some had VTEC, some didn't. Moving on to the interior of this vehicle, it may seem almost too familiar, and that's because, yes, a lot of the similarities in the terms of design are pretty much the same as the Civic, but because this is the EL, and not only that, the premium EL trim, which I have here, it comes with this nice leather interior, which gives you heated front seats and also some wood grain, of course not real, throughout as well. One thing that jumps out in front of me that every time I look at this interior is actually the front seats, and that's because the front seats, at least the headrests, look like they're straight out of the Integra, and God, I love that car. Now, in terms of features of what you got back in, let's say, 2005 when this particular vehicle came out, it wasn't a heck of a lot. Now, you have to remember that they tried to save as much money as they could, but also giving you other little things that you couldn't get in the Civic. So it was kind of a deal breaker at times if you were choosing between this and the regular Civic. But you did get some things that make it seem worthwhile, and that was single zone automatic climate control. And then also, I said earlier, the heated seats was a big thing. And then you do have this nice leather wrapped steering wheel, and of course, a fog lights as well. And not to mention that you could get the sunroof in this vehicle, but of course, typical Honda fashion, they wouldn't put their controls up here by the sun visors. They actually have it mounted over here on the side as well with the cruise control. Another little weird thing about this kind of section of the vehicle and having the sunroof controls there is actually the button for the defrost for the side mirrors is actually its own separate button. So it's kind of weird how they did that, but I don't know, it's just a Honda thing. Another weird thing, of course, is the fact that they didn't put a power door lock switch on the passenger side, just the driver's side, which I think was just a cost-cutting method. But hey, you know what? Let's be honest, how often were you actually gonna lock the doors from that side anyways? Getting into the rear of this vehicle is actually pretty easy. It's surprising because this is a subcompact vehicle after all. And I have the driver's seat adjusted to my height, which is 5'11", so I can actually fit my feet quite comfortably underneath the seats, but also have a decent amount of knee room as well. Now, this being a vehicle from the early 2000s, especially of a Japanese background, you didn't really get much of anything in terms of features back here. You didn't even get a fold-out armrest right here in the center, nor did you even get cup holders. But you did get a map pocket on the passenger seat and also a dome light that you can turn off or on if you wish to do so. But other than that, that's about it. So let's move on to the trunk. What can I really say? It's a trunk of a subcompact car, but I will say I have had to use this trunk before when camping, at least last summer when I was working on my Pathfinder. I had to use this vehicle as the alternative, and I was surprised. I was able to fit all my camping gear, at least what I would normally take, plus 2 passengers in my vehicle, and I was able to make it quite the distance, and actually it worked out really well. So this vehicle is not bad. You can make it work, of course. The one downside, of course, is the hinges on the back of the trunk lid. They can get in the way, but you also can fold the rear seats down, and that will make it easier to at least pass things through the back end here, especially if you're carrying longer items. I always thought it was unique that Canada got its own vehicle. Like, nowhere else would get a vehicle like this. Usually Europeans get the better cars, at least that's what I always say, but we actually got something kind of good here too. We got the EL, which I think is just, yeah, not just a rebadged Civic, but you do get a little bit more to it than that. The vehicle I'm driving today is equipped with a 5-speed manual transmission. There was an option for a 4-speed automatic, and that kind of brings me on to my next point, is that this generation of the Civic and the Acura EL, at least in the earlier years, had its fair share of problems with the automatic transmission. Another issue too that this vehicle did have is head gasket problems, at least later on, of course, it being an older vehicle, with this one having just over 200,000 kilometers. It's something you're going to have to watch out for, especially if you own this vehicle. So make sure you check out that temperature gauge. I want to bring up the engine once more and just say that despite the fact that it doesn't make a lot of horsepower and that you probably wouldn't want to brag to your friends about the numbers, it's actually adequate for this vehicle. I mean, yeah, this is a subcompact sedan, but it's light enough. It's actually only about just over a ton, not even 2 tons. And that's plenty. I mean, 127 horsepower goes quite a ways in this vehicle, especially, as I said, when it's paired with a manual transmission. You do have the power at your fingertips. The rev range is pretty good as well. Because of those weight savings, you get better fuel economy as a result, getting about 7.9 liters per 100 kilometers in the city, 6 on the highway, and a combined 7 liters per 100 kilometers. And for those of you still using the Imperial system, that is 31 miles per gallon in the city, 45 on the highway, and a combined 38 miles per gallon, which is the exact same as the Civic. And also the fact that this vehicle, being now over 15 years old, it actually gets better fuel economy than most modern day sedans. The one thing that does make me sad though is that they discontinued the EL in 2005. This was actually the last model year, the one I'm driving here today. And after that, it was on to another vehicle, which was called the CSX. And that vehicle, well, I honestly don't think it was that much more unique than the Civic. And that was short-lived as well. And then once that was gone, no more kind of one-off luxury subcompact or compact sedans for the North American market. It was just their regular lineup that you could get all across the world. So, is it just a regular Civic, or did it actually mean something more to the Canadian market when it was released? And honestly, I think it was. I think it had a great impact, not only on the brand, but society as a whole. I thought that this vehicle was very special to everyone who remembers it. And if you're in the market for an older subcompact sedan, not that most of you are, but if you were to consider something like this, I wouldn't hesitate to even add it to my shopping list, because it is somewhat affordable. You get them for about under $5,000 Canadian, and also that you can maybe get one with a manual transmission would make it all that much better and much more fun. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and also consider subscribing so that way you don't miss any future reviews such as this and also car projects. And until next time, take care. Bye now.